next presenter to the stage, the chairman of Lowell Farms. Please put your hands together for George Allen.
All right, I'm the guy that Benzinga brings around when they want to catch up on schedules. So I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you all. Today, I'm not going to page through our investor presentation. It's a fantastic document. It's available online. I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking to you today, our investors and prospective investors, in the fashion that I would in a one-on-one. I'm going to focus a little bit about where we're taking our business and where we want to take our company. And frankly, our vision for building the most enduring business in the whole category of cannabis. Now, it's been about 2.2 years since we've been here at Miami. And I don't remember if you were all here at Miami, but when we were last year at Miami, we were sort of in that crazy zone between when we first started hearing about COVID and when COVID actually caused us to go into those crazy lockdowns that changed our lives and defined a generation of kids. Now, what's amazing about COVID and its relationship with cannabis is how important cannabis was to millions of people. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. We saw precisely how much cannabis means to so many people around the country. We heard it from them on social media. We heard it from them in dispensaries. We heard it from them when we would deliver the product. Now, we know exactly what cannabis does for people. It does thousands of things. It changes their lives. And most importantly, it helps people, and it's important to them. And I'm grateful that we had the chance to do that for people. Now, I think a lot about the fact about something I read the other day, which is today, scarily enough, there are 400 million people. There are 400 million people today in China who are not allowed to leave their apartments. Today, there are 400 million people who are not allowed to leave their apartments, and they have been in their apartments for 1 month. You want to talk about a population that needs weed? It's those guys. Desperately need weed. And we had it, and they don't. And I'm grateful for the progress that we've all made. It's not as fast as we wanted. Lord knows, when we were back here last time, we were talking about how our new president was going to change the rules on us. Well, we're still waiting. But most importantly, if you're in this room today, you are here because you subscribe to the prospect, the potential notion that in cannabis, brands are going to matter. Some voice in the back of your head is suggesting to you that brands are going to matter. That's a really important question because it's a seminal topic right now in all cannabis. Where are we in terms of brands mattering? We're not really sure. But I once had the great opportunity. I had a great opportunity to work next to a true visionary. I worked next to a guy named Harris Domashek when I was at Acreage. And Harris was a genius, a true genius. He could see around corners that others really couldn't. And Harris once said to me, he said, look, we've got to get together and talk about the biggest problem with cannabis. I was like, Harris, what's the biggest problem with cannabis? I love cannabis. He said, look, the biggest problem we have with cannabis is that it's simply too cheap. It's too easy to make. It's too accessible. And if all we're doing is just selling a commodity, there's not going to be enough money to go around. If all we're doing is selling oregano or any other type of spice, there's not going to be enough money. So we absolutely have got to build brands, and brands that matter to the consumer. And I think that's really important. You can get an entire wedding high for what it costs about $50 to grow. $50 to grow, you can get an entire wedding party high. Your liquor bill for that wedding is going to be well into the thousands. So if we want to build the industry here that can support conferences on Miami Beach, we have got to build brands. And that's what I want to talk to you about today with Lowell. Today, ironically, cannabis kind of has the opposite problem, and I'm going to walk you through it. Today, in this immediate moment in time, cannabis has the opposite problem. And the opposite problem is that it's actually too expensive. It might not be too expensive to the soccer mom. It might not be too expensive to the occasional user, but who's smoking weed in this country? Who is smoking weed in this country? Who is supporting this multi-billion-dollar industry? I suggest to you that it's the 62%, according to Brightfield Group. It's the 62% of consumers that are out there that smoke at least 1 time a day. And it's the 48% of consumers that are out there who smoke at least 2 times a day. That's who our customer is. That's who the biggest customer is. And today, mostly the people in this room at this conference, we don't own that customer because they're going to the black market. I got a barber in New York. He buys his weed by the pound. He's a regular customer. He smokes all the time. He's the customer that we need to go get. He, she, they, them, we need to bring those customers into our business, because if we don't, we will be acting at the fringes of this industry and not at the core. And to get that customer, to go get that customer, we need to give them a value proposition that they absolutely cannot refuse. Because that customer, they don't want cannabis. That customer absolutely needs cannabis. And I know it's a little sensitive to say the word need when it comes to cannabis, but I recently heard something from a really brilliant peer of mine in the industry, one of our industry's smartest. She told me, she said, what's so wrong with needing cannabis? We need so many things. We need so many things. We need my phone. If I'm not with my phone, I'm a train wreck. We need sneakers so that we don't get blisters. I'm pretty sure that today when I go home to my family, who I very much need, I'm going to need an Uber driver who can drive safely to the airport. I'm going to need an airplane. I'm going to need it fueled with AV1 gas. I'm going to need air traffic control to make sure I land safely. John Donne wrote 400 years ago that no man is an island, and that is no more true today than it has ever been. Because the reality is, we desperately need cannabis. So what are we going to do for that 48% of cannabis consumers? I'm going to talk a little bit about Lowell Brand and how I'm going to bring Lowell there, what our plan is with Lowell. So if you don't know Lowell, Lowell is one of the most iconic and earliest brands in the cannabis landscape. It's synonymous with quality. And to demonstrate the power of a Lowell brand, we dropped that Lowell brand into Illinois and into Massachusetts, and with almost no marketing budgets and at price premiums to the current prices for pre-rolls in those markets, we became the number 2 and the number 3 pre-roll participant in those markets. Think about who's in those markets. How did we do that? We did that with brand and brand quality, a brand that stands for quality. Now, it's not that consumers bought those brands because they believe it's cannabis from California. They bought those brands because there is an intangible quality to that product and that brand that resonates with consumers. And how did we get there? We got there by trial and error. We got there because of survival of the fittest. That brand made it through the gauntlet of the most discerning consumer in all of cannabis. The consumer who is spoiled with the best options in all of cannabis, and that is the California consumer. Now, the Lowell brand is something more than just quality. It was one of the first brands in all of cannabis that gave consumers permission to feel proud about their cannabis consumption. It doesn't matter who was in your audience that day or who you shared your choice of cannabis with. Lowell stands for quality. It communicates an experience well before you even try the product. It's synonymous with the best in class in quality. And that's what the Lowell brand stands for. Now, we could make a harvest on that brand for eons, selling that at a premium price point. And we do. We demonstrate that success of where we are in Illinois and Massachusetts, as well in California with the #1 all-flower pre-roll. But we are not going to stop there. Just as much as Tesla started building sports cars that were completely out of reach of the average consumer, and 12 years later is selling a $35,000 sedan, that's what we are going to do with Lowell Brand. Now, it's important to understand how we're going to do that. Because what our mission is to go get that consumer who's on the other side of the fence, who's today buying their weed by the pound, who's today buying their weed in bulk. We need that consumer. And I can test to you the way to go get that consumer. The way to go get that consumer is by using the form factor of the most successful CPG product in pretty much all of CPG history. The most successful CPG product in all of CPG history that frankly we're not really allowed to talk about. And that is the pack of smokes. Now, why is the pack of smokes so magical? Why is it so important? Why am I so focused on? Why is our whole company so focused on? Well, there's a moment. There's a moment when you open a pack of smokes. It's a magical moment, and it's been cultural for us since the dawn of time, and it's all over the world. When you open your pack of smokes, in that moment between when you've chosen to have a smoke and when you actually do, you communicate in that very brief moment to the entire world a little bit about yourself. You communicate to the world who you are as a consumer and what values you believe in. And that is marketing gold. Now, the biggest problem I've always had with all of cannabis is that very few of the products that we sell in cannabis have that marketing moment. Now, think about the vape pen, right? The vape pen is a really transformational product, but you have no idea looking across the room what 510 threaded cart anybody's smoking. You have no idea what flower somebody just rolled up into their pre-roll. And frankly, you have no idea what edibles someone just consumed in the bathroom. Those are great products, but they were built on the premise of concealment, right? They were built when we were all a little bit shy about how much we wanted to share smoking weed, right? They were built on that idea. Those are great, but it's very hard to build brands around products that you don't openly share and showcase. The pre-roll is different. The pre-roll is based around this premise. This pack of smokes is based around this premise that I'm signing up for an identity, an icon, a being that represents not just the product that I've chosen and the experience that I want, but it also signifies the same type of thing as we buy automobiles for, the same type of thing we buy jewelry for, footwear for. We're showing the world who we are. And that's where marketing really exists. When you want to show the world who you are, and I can convince you through marketing and through the intelligent use of branding, what you are trying to signify to the world when you've chosen us. And so our vision, our plan, is to take Lowell there. We're not satisfied with being the high price point. What we want to do is go and get this dominant customer out there, this customer who represents a massive portion of the demand base in this country. But if we don't get the price right, we're never going to get them. And that's really important. Now, we talk a lot about California and the challenges California has with the illicit market. But newsflash, every single person at this conference has a problem with the illicit market. And that problem is only growing. That problem is only growing because all the signals are out there all the time to everybody in this industry that there is impunity with trafficking in cannabis. We know this. We know this. As a matter of fact, if you want to get a license in New York State, you have to have been busted. That's the message that we have sent. So in order to compete with the black market, we can't do it by throwing people in jail. There's no political will and appetite to do it. None. Doesn't exist. And if we ask for it, we're not going to get it, so we shouldn't. If we're going to compete with that black market, we have to do it with price. And we have to do it with quality. And we have to do it with safety. And we have to do it in partnership with the governing bodies that control our industry. So I'm excited to move into this journey. Now, it requires three things that we have. Number one, the first thing is feedstock, good quality weed. In the fourth quarter of last year, we became the #1 seller in all of California for flower. You don't get there by selling second-rate flower. You get there by selling great product, and that's what we sell. Number two, you need a brand that people trust, that they know is inexpensive but not cheap. And that's what we're going to do with Lowell. And number three, you get there with an incredible amount of automation. We need to drive every single human touch of cannabis out of the process. And if you can deliver to the consumer that smokable product, a pack of smokes, perfectly priced to compete against the black market, we will bring in not our share of the pre-roll market. We will bring in not a stealing share from the flower market, which we successfully migrate over into the pre-roll market. We will bring in the consumer who is not coming into dispensaries today. And that's where the $50 billion TAM is. Then that's what we're going to do. Now, if you want to know somebody who subscribes to our vision to this, it's our newest partner. It's our newest partner in the form of Zippo. Now, everybody knows Zippo. It's been around for 90 years. Zippo stood with our our soldiers in trenches, and it's supported smokers for decades. Zippo watched the transformation as people embraced smoking and walked around with cigarette lighters that they knew they could trust at all times. Zippo asked us, they came to us and said, we want to get into cannabis and we want you to help us do it. And we said, that's a perfect partnership for us. So the partnership that aligns for us is we help Zippo get their brand recognized in cannabis and into dispensaries. And Zippo helps us get our brand nationwide. Now, you can't walk into a smoke shop in this country without seeing Zippo lighters. You've all seen it, the carousel. And that's where we're going to be, at the top of that carousel all over this country. Because our brand needs to be ingrained to consumers that we are synonymous with cannabis. So I'm grateful for their partnership. And I'll leave you with just one last fact. Between 1920 and 1970, the peak of cigarette smoking in this country, tobacco usage per capita only grew 30%. But cigarette use grew 15-fold from 7% to 85%. So what we are doing is we're just looking at history. Don't look any further than history. Now, the cigarette industry made thousands of mistakes. Don't confuse that with our plan. We're looking at consumer behavior, and we're watching where the consumer wants to take us because they've told us. And if we get this right, we have the chance to build something that endures, something that can go beyond the fact that someone can get everybody high at a wedding party for $50. And that's our plan. Thank you so much. I'm willing to answer a couple questions if you have some time.
All right, George Allen, Chairman of Lowell Farms. Let's hear it for him one more time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you want to do questions or we have time? Oh, sorry. Apparently, I ran overtime and I busted the budget. Sorry about that. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time.
But George isn't going far, so feel free to talk to George, get all of your questions answered, and have a great time at the conference.